in service of his conservative politics, will distort facts, will misrepresent things, and will, in some cases, just fabricate.
In the personal story segment tonight, we were surprised to find out that an American who lost his father in the World Trade Center attack had signed an anti-war advertisement that accused the USA itself of terrorism.
And they were so persistent about getting me on the O'Reilly show because they found out that I was on the advisory board and signed a statement that was against the war, and then I was directly impacted by 9/11. The success that I had on the O'Reilly show had to do with just practice and preparation. I taped the shows, and what I did is I took a stopwatch that I used to use for running sprints in high school, and I would see when he has a hostile guest, and I would time how long it takes for him to cut them off.
You were the only one. I was surprised. And the reason I was surprised is that this ad equates the United States with the terrorists.
I said, I'm shocked that you're surprised, and basically just made the only point I wanted to make.
Our current president now inherited a legacy from his father and inherited a political legacy that's responsible for training militarily, economically, and situating geopolitically the parties involved in the alleged assassination and murder of my father and countless of thousands of others. So I don't see why it's so surprising for you to think that I would come back and want to support.
It is surprising, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's surprising. You are mouthing a far-left position. What upsets me is I don't think your father would be approving of this.
Well, actually, my father thought that Bush's presidency was illegitimate.
Maybe he did, but I don't think he'd be equating this country as a terrorist nation.
Well, I wasn't saying that it was necessarily like that.
You signed this and it absolutely said that.
I told him that he uses 9/11 and sympathy with the 9/11 families and the lives lost to rationalize his narrow right-wing agenda.
You evoke sympathy with the 9/11 families.
That's a bunch of crap. So I've done more for the 9/11 families, by their own admission. I've done more for them than you will ever hope to do.
Okay.
So you keep your mouth shut when you sit me exploiting those people.
You're not representing
and I never represent you. You know why?
Why?
Because you have a warped view of this world and a warped view of this country.
Well, explain that. Let me give you an example.
I'm not going to debate this with you.
Well, let me give you an example of parallel experiences.
No,
on September 14th.
Here's the record. All right? You didn't support the action against Afghanistan to remove the Taliban. You were against it.
Why would I want to brutalize and further punish the people in Afghanistan?
Who killed your father?
The people in Afghanistan didn't kill my father.
Sure they did. The Al-Qaeda people were trained there.
The Al-Qaeda people? What about the Afghanistan?
See, I'm more angry about it than you are.
So what about George Bush?
What about George Bush? He had nothing to do with it.
The director, senior, as director.
He had nothing to do with it.
So the people that trained 100,000 mujahideen who were extremists.
I hope your mom isn't watching this. I hope your mother is not watching this.
It's unfair for O'Reilly to evoke both my mom and my father in the interview, especially when I wasn't. You know, I mean, my mom is a grieving widow.
September 14th, do you want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Please don't tell me to shut up.
In respect for your father, who was a Port Authority worker, a fine American, who got killed unnecessarily by barbarians.
By radical extremists trained by this government.
Respect
not
for
the
him.
People of America,
I'm not
the people, the ruling class, the small minority.
Cut his mic.
You see him gesturing to security guards, and then came the after-film performance.
After they're off the air, he said to the kid something to the effect, "Get out of my studio before I f***ing tear you to pieces."
This is our house here. If somebody comes to your house and begins spitting on the floor, you'd remove them. Glick was out of control and spewing hatred for this program and his country using vile propaganda.
The next day, I just turned on and watched the follow-up and saw my views totally distorted. Next thing I know, I was saying Bush planned 9/11.
Glick was saying without a shred of evidence that President Bush and Bush the elder were directly responsible for 9/11. Now, that kind of stuff is not only loony, it's defamation.
That paints me as a fringe conspiracy nut.
So O'Reilly's just lying here.
He came on this program and accused President Bush of knowing about 9/11 and murdering his own father.
Well, I'm trying to stop this war right now.
I know you are, but you're basically
Are you against
saying,
that? Stopping this war? Stopping this war?
No, we cannot leave Iraq right now.
So you would sacrifice your child to secure Fallujah? I want to hear you say that.
I would sacrifice myself.
No, your child.
Myself.
It's Bush sending the children there.
Myself.
Not you and I don't go to wars because we're too old.
Because if we back out of there, there'll be more deaths, and you know it.
Would you? I want to hear you say, I, Bill O'Reilly, would sacrifice my child to secure Fallujah.
I'm not going to say what you say.
You don't believe that. Why should Bush sacrifice the children of people across America for this?
It's a worldwide war on terrorism. I know that escapes.
Wait a minute. Terrorism?
Yeah.
Iraq?
Terrorism. Correct. There are terrorists in Iraq. Yeah.
Oh, real? Oh, so Iraq now is responsible for the terrorism here.
President Bush genuinely believes Saddam had WMDs.
The Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein is determined to get his hands on a nuclear bomb.
Nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapon.
All right, Mr. Barrett, Sean Hannity here. Do you really believe that 9/11 was an inside job, not just 9/11, but Madrid and Bali and the Zarqawi operation?
Well, you know, actually...
hang on a second.
Do you
believe personally that these are inside jobs, yes or no?
It's not quite that simple. I do know, I don't believe, I know that 9/11 was an inside job. Professor Stephen Jones has found residue of thermate on the steel samples from the World Trade Center. We now know that it was taken down in a controlled demolition.
All right, so you believe that the buildings came down in a controlled demolition, right?
Well, I don't believe it. I've looked at the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming.
All right, the evidence is overwhelming to you because you're a conspiracy nut, but
no, actually, all of you, I ask your viewers to take a look at this evidence for themselves. They can go to st911.org. That's Scholars for 9/11 Truth. Take a look. Take a look at the demolitions.
I know you think
Morgan Reynolds, a former Bush administration official, says that the Bush administration blew the World Trade Center to kingdom come. That's a direct quote from a member of the Bush administration itself. They blew the World Trade Center to kingdom come.
The Jews were told to leave. Well, we've heard a lot of these sick, bizarre theories.
And
I don't believe any of them, but you're allowed to believe what you want, but that's not what's at hand here. The issue is whether or not you, with your bizarre theories, are the best.
I think you have the bizarre theory. You think it was 19 guys with box cutters led by a guy on dialysis in a cave in Afghanistan? That's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, that's the craziest conspiracy theory of all of them.
Okay. I wish I had the Twilight Zone music. Now, here's my next question. The issue that is at hand here, you're entitled to have your opinion. I don't really care what you believe. But if we're talking about a captive group of students in a classroom, the question we've got to ask... Hang on a second. Well, they're sitting in your classroom, and you have a position of authority. I'm wondering, the question is whether or not you're the most competent to teach them. And most people think you're a nut. Most people think your views are not even worth listening to.
We just had a poll here in Madison, and we found that 90% of the respondents at Channel 3000 poll said that I should be allowed to teach. Only 10% said I shouldn't.
That's the question
and 60%,
I don't think what your views are.
60% agreed with me about the questions I'm raising about 9/11. 60% of the respondents.
I think
you're in the minority.
Right to speak. I don't think this is the proper forum, though, for people that hold extremist views like yourself. Reasonable
you guys are extremists. Fox News is the biggest bunch of extremists on the planet.
But reasonable people see you as an extremist, and I don't think you're the most appropriate guy to teach that class. I
don't think you're the most appropriate guy to be on the airwaves spewing your venom throughout this country. I think you guys should be taken off the airwaves because you are the guys who are...
There is no journalism at the Fox News Channel.
Quiet! Listen, cut his mic.
Listen, Chad, stop. Chad, I want to test if you're an honest individual.
All right. I'm sorry to cut you off. I know we're in some controversial stuff here, but my religion didn't teach me that. But thank you very much for being here.
It's a right-wing network, and you don't want to hear this stuff.
You want to do.
Not about the kid. It's about you, Jamie. That's good. Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Yes.
Good night. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, sir.
Don't take a cheap little pathetic shot. I am telling you that that's...
You're taking cheap little pathetic shots.
Just giving his record.
Tell you what the truth is. No, you're misrepresenting his record.
I'm telling the truth, sir. That's the truth about his record.
I understand what your position is not correct.
I'd like to hear one single... You're on satellite radio, because you can't get on regular radio.
Paula Evans, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Bill, if you are so concerned about public figures being bad role models for children, please stop rudely interrupting your guests and telling them to shut up. Well, the shut up line has happened only once in 6 years, Miss Evans.
Well, you know, I think that asking a student to stay in the closet in order to go to school
is a lot
shut
like
up about
sex.
An African-American student.
You want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Please don't tell me to shut up.
Respect. Why did you have to tell him you were an atheist if you didn't have any trouble reading the oath? Why didn't you just shut up? What Jimmy Carter should do is privately give Mr. Bush his opinion and shut up publicly. That would be best for the country.
And it is our duty as loyal Americans to shut up once the fighting begins.
Once the war against Saddam begins, we expect every American to support our military, and if they can't do that, to shut up.
All he's got in 6.5 years is that I misspoke, that I labeled a polka war to Peabody. He writes it in his book. He tries to make me out.
No.
Hey,
Shut up. You had your 35 minutes. Shut up.